Okay, Mary, welcome to Scrum Masters of the Universe.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. And before we even really kind of get started, I just want to make the comment that it's amazing the community that you've built here, and the people that are coming to these events are so engaged and thoughtful. So it's a pleasure and an honor to come here to Scrum
Thank
Masters
you.
of the Universe. It's just such a treat. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And yeah, I should mention that Mary has been here several times. She's also I think I mentioned it, but she's also one of our sponsors. So without her, she pays for this Zoom license. So the fact that we're all here is on the Zoom is because of Mary.
Oh,
So thank you for that,
that's so
Mary
sweet.
Scrum.
Thank you. That is so sweet. Well, I'm gonna start then. I'm sharing my screen, and I'll just get the slideshow started. So, the purpose of today's presentation is to talk about the balance of power in Scrum, and I think it's a funny way to put it, right? Balance of power. What are we on a power trip? What's going on? Are we doing Marvel characters? And no, we're not talking about Marvel. We're not talking about going on a power trip, but we are talking about clear accountabilities, or if you want to put it another way, role clarity. And I think it's really important because whenever I see strife on a Scrum team, or unnecessary stress, or people just not really getting along, a lot of times it comes back to simple understanding of who's accountable for what. People, when they don't have this clear understanding of the accountabilities in Scrum and what's the purpose of each, and what are the left and right limits of each, and why, the why behind each of the accountabilities in Scrum, when you don't understand that, even if you're meaning to be helpful, you may be stepping on each other's toes without realizing it, and cause.
Mary, somehow you went on mute. I'm not sure what happened there.
I don't even know how that happened.
You might need to, but you might need to rewind 10 seconds.
Okay, am I still on mute?
No, you're good.
Okay, that's I don't even know how that could possibly have happened. Okay, so it all comes back to role clarity, right? The reason we're here to talk about role clarity is because a lot of times a lack of role clarity, a lack of clear understanding of the accountabilities can cause strife on the Scrum team. And that's why I think it's important. So I want to start off by introducing myself, right? My name is Mary Iqbal. I am a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org. And I'm thrilled to be a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org. I'm a very big believer in the Scrum.org mission and their approach of learning by doing, right? We don't just lecture, ironically though, because this is kind of a lecture, but there'll be some discussion here. I'm also the founder of Rebel Scrum, which is in fact inspired by Star Wars. And I am the organizer of the Scrum Day Conference, which is this year scheduled for October 23rd, 2024 in Madison, Wisconsin. And so I hope to see you all there. Jamie came last year. So if you want to meet Jamie in person, she's coming this year again. So I think it'd be fantastic if you all join us there. Take a look at tickets, and information are available at www.scrumday.org. So let's get started. So the Scrum framework, right? Scrum is built upon this collective intelligence of people using it. What's important about Scrum, though, is it is a framework. It's a framework within which people collaborate to deliver value. And when we say framework, what we mean, it's not a set of work instructions, but it is a very minimalist framework, right? We don't tell you how to deliver value, right? We just give you a framework that allows you to collaborate together. Here's the rules that, I don't want to say rules, but here's the way that we work together. And then you, in your unique environment, figure out how to apply Scrum. Now, that is can cause some confusion, right? Because it's not a rule book, and yet there are, I'm going to call them guardrails within the Scrum framework. There's clear accountabilities that describe the purpose of each of the accountabilities in Scrum and how they're supposed to work together. And so Scrum consists of 3 accountabilities in Scrum. They're called accountabilities in Scrum and not roles, and that's a deliberate choice. The reason the accountabilities are called accountabilities instead of roles is because, for one thing, people can play more than wear more than one hat. You can be the product owner and developer. You can be a Scrum Master and a developer. So using that term role, right, would imply that you could only be one. The other reason they're called accountabilities is because you don't have to have the job title to be a product owner, right? You don't have to have the job title to be a Scrum Master. And the third reason they're called accountabilities in Scrum is because the Scrum Guide describes what you're accountable for if you are the product owner. What are you accountable for if you are the developer? And what are you accountable for if you're the Scrum Master? What do you do, right? That's why they're called accountabilities. Now, Scrum consists of 3 accountabilities: product owner, developers, and Scrum Master. That's not to say that there aren't other roles in the organization. Of course, there's CEOs, there's human resources people, there's all kinds of people that support the Scrum team. Scrum also includes 5 events, which we're not going to talk about in this particular conversation, but the 5 events are listed here: the sprint, sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. These are all events in Scrum that help people have opportunities to collaborate. And then finally, there are 3 artifacts described in the Scrum framework. And these artifacts provide transparency for our work. For example, the product backlog is a list of all the requirements that are going to be delivered for the product. The sprint planning, oh dear, it says sprint planning. It's supposed to be sprint backlog, whoops. And the increment, which is what is delivered at the end of every sprint. So in this, I'm going to say lecture, this event, this conversation, what we're talking about is the 3 accountabilities. And again, why does that matter? Because so often strife or stress or confusion in the Scrum team comes from a lack of clarity around the accountabilities. So in this particular conversation, we're going to be talking about the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the developers. The purpose of the product owner is to maximize the value of the product. They're accountable for what is the Scrum team going to work on. The purpose of the Scrum Master is to improve the adoption of Scrum. They're focused on the Scrum framework and making sure everybody understands how to use Scrum and really how to work together to deliver value. And the third accountability in Scrum is developers. They're responsible for doing the work of the Scrum team, for delivering a done increment every sprint. So they're focused on delivering. Now, if we have time in this conversation at the end, we will also talk about, I'm going to say, some supporting roles, right? Just like if this was a movie, these would be the supporting roles, right? Managers. There's this myth out there that there's no such thing as a manager in Scrum, and that's not true. There's no manager in the Scrum Guide. That's true. But that doesn't mean we don't need managers. We need leaders in the organization. We'll talk about stakeholders if we have time, and how stakeholders work with the Scrum team. And we'll talk about the impact of the customer, right? The customer outcomes are very in right now, right? So this we'll be talking about the customers. So we're going to start today's conversation off with the product owner. And I would just want to say the purpose of the product owner, the reason we have a product owner is to maximize the value of the product. And the way they do that is they decide what the Scrum team will work on, which is actually a huge responsibility if you think about this, right? I'm deciding what the entire Scrum team is going to work on, however big that Scrum team is, right? So, or however many Scrum teams are supporting my product, I should say. So it's very important. The product owner's main tool for achieving this is to create a product goal or product vision, product goal, and a product backlog. The product backlog is really the list of things that the team's going to be working on. So when I think about the product owner in Scrum, the way I think of it is the product owner is really the bridge between, the company vision. Company's got a vision. There's a vision for where the larger organization, what our vision is. There's the business strategy for the larger organization. And then within that, every business probably has several products, more than one, no doubt, right? And each product will have a product owner. And that product owner is accountable for creating a vision for their product. Where are we going, right? What's the future state of this product look like? What's our goal? How are we going to get to that vision? And how do we measure success? And then sort of within the onion, one step more into the onion, right? The product owner also creates a forecast. How are we getting there, right? When are we going to get there? There's usually some kind of roadmap a visual representation of, what is the plan? The product owner may have, that's okay. The product owner may have a release schedule, or at least the product owner decides when to release. And then within that, the product owner has a product backlog. This is the plan. This is how we're delivering this product. And then in the middle of the onion, we have the Scrum team. And that's why I say the product owner is sort of the bridge between the Scrum team and the larger organization, in a sense, making sure that the product goal, the product vision lines up with the larger organization. So I like to think of, if you think of the Scrum team as sort of a sailing ship, right? The product owner is the one charting our course. Where are we going? Without the product owner, right? We don't know where we're going. We're like a ship without a rudder. We're just drifting. The product owner gives us focus and direction. This is where we're going. This is why we're going there. This is our goal. And this is our roadmap to get there. So in order to achieve this, right, there's a lot of things that the product owner does, right? Even more than that's really on this list. But these are the things that are deliberately mentioned in the Scrum Guide. But there's more to it. The product owner creates a vision. The product owner maximizes value through the content and ordering of the product backlog. The product owner decides when to release. When do we have enough to release? They are accountable for the value that's delivered as part of the product. They do a lot of stakeholder management. They're one person, right? As you saw on my very first screen, there can be only one product owner per product. Kudos to you if you get that as an 80s reference, movie quote right there. They're accountable for expressing and ordering the product backlog. So the content and ordering of the product backlog, they're accountable for it. Now, that doesn't mean they can't delegate any of these things. Now, I wouldn't delegate the vision personally, but certainly as a product owner, I could delegate the creation of individual product backlog items. Imagine if I was a product owner that had 7 teams supporting my product. I'm probably not going to be writing every last product backlog item on the list. That'd be unreasonable. So I certainly delegate that to developers on the Scrum team, or there may be developers that have specialization as BAs on the Scrum team. I can delegate the creation of product backlog items to individuals on the Scrum teams. That doesn't mean I'm not accountable though, right? The buck stops here. I still own the final order, the final content, but I can certainly delegate. The product owner should be respected by the organization, which means people should not be going around the product owner, right? The product owner makes the call on what is the thing that we're going to do to add value. Now, they get feedback from stakeholders. They get feedback from customers. They're measuring customer outcomes to make and adjust their decisions, because Scrum is founded upon empiricism, making decisions on what is known. So as the product owner, I'm seeking out sources of information and sources of knowledge so I can change my plan based on what I learned. So a continuous learner is really important as a product owner. I'm creating that forecast. Where are we going? What's the plan? And the product owner is also the only one who can cancel the sprint if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. So I want to ask you all a question. Now, the product owner does more than this, right? There's more to that. I need to understand my product. I need to be monitoring my metrics. But I want to take a moment. Of these items on the screen, I want to ask you in the chat, if you can, we're going to take a little informal vote here. Which one of these do you think is most important? There's no right answer to this one, right? But I'm just curious what your thoughts are. So if you could throw in the chat, take a look. What do you think? Maximizes value. Vision, yeah. I tend to be sort of the visionary stance of the product owners. What kind of comes naturally to me? Value, though, right? Maximizing value. That's why we're here. Ordering the backlog is so important, right? Coming into sprint planning without an ordered backlog is stressful. The product owner definitely needs to be working on that. Value. Seeing a lot of value coming through here. Value and vision. All of these things are good, right? All of these things are appropriate. Different product owners are more comfortable with, vision stance or customer service stance. But yeah, the purpose of the product owner is to maximize value. And these are all the things, some of the things that they do to do that. So the product owner is the role responsibility, the role that's the accountability that's responsible for representing the interests of the business or community. They may work with user groups to determine what features are needed. But basically, their purpose is to maximize the value of the product that results from the work of the development team. And to do that, they're accountable for the content and ordering of the product backlog. So since this conversation is, well, one more thought. Again, what, how, and why, right? What do? They're maximizing the value of the product. How do they do it? I feel like I'm a bit of a cheerleader here, right? We're creating and ordering the product backlog, right? And why do we do it? We're accountable for value, right, as product owners. That's what we do here. All right, so since this is a conversation about balance of power, I want to ask you a little bit more audience participation here. I'm going to give you a kind of a, I don't want to call it a case study exactly, but a scenario. I want to ask your opinion on this. So each of the accountabilities in Scrum, as I said before, when they overstep the responsibility, it creates strife. So I want to ask your opinion on this one. The product owner in this particular kind of made up scenario is concerned about the progress of the sprint. The product owner attends the daily Scrum and directs that Susan will take ownership of a high priority product backlog item that was planned for delivery this sprint. In your opinion, put your thoughts in the chats. Is this an overstep on the part of the product owner? And back to, are they overbalancing themselves here? So yes, absolutely, they're overstepping themselves here. The developers own how the product is delivered. The product owner owns the content and ordering of the product backlog, what we're working on, but developers own how. So absolutely, this is an overstep. I love what somebody said. The product owner isn't the dev manager. Probably not, right? And there are maybe cases where the product owner is the manager, but still, in this case, right, as the product owner, it would be totally inappropriate for them to decide how something is done. And I really like how Katiana said it. Yes, the developers decide who or how the work gets done. So well stated. We'll do one more of these. At the sprint planning event, the product owner encourages the team to pull more work into the sprint because the product owner was hoping to deliver a few more product backlog items this sprint. What do you think? Is it an overstep? Some of these are a little bit gray, right? So for this one, I'm going to go with it depends, right? It depends on how it could be. This one was deliberately a little bit in the gray area. If they're encouraging the team, asking, oh, do you think you could just do a few more? I was really hoping to do this. But if the team has the power to say, no, this is what we can do, then it's not an overstep. So it kind of depends. So there's really no right answer to this one, but I put it out here because this happens all the time. We want a healthy, I don't want to say conflict, but yes, I'm going to say a conflict, a healthy level of conflict, a healthy push and pull between the product owner and the developers on the Scrum team. So the product owner, yes, absolutely should be asking the team for more. Can we do a little bit more? Can we do this? But it's really important that the developers can say no if it's not something that they feel comfortable with, or if they feel that it's too much work to add into the Scrum team. Now, I want to say something here. I didn't say if it's too much work to commit to, because the Scrum team does not commit to the number of product backlog items pulled into the sprint. They are committing to the sprint goal. I want to be cautious with that. But the answer to this one is it depends. So the product owner is asking the team to stretch, encourage. It's not pushing. I see your chats out here. These are nice. They can try to sway, but it's down to developers. I like how you put that. So yeah, Vladimir, I see what you put here. If they're not committing to the sprint goal, it is not, I couldn't tell what you meant here though. It is an overstep. It depends. I think you're saying it depends. Factoring in vacations. So excellent. Encourage. Yeah, somebody said, what do we mean by encourage, right? If we're saying asking nicely, then it's not an overstep. If we're saying the product owner is demanding, then yes, it's an overstep. So a bit of a balance. I feel like the product owner and the developers may be sort of on a seesaw a little bit, right? Can you? No, we can't, right? So it's okay to push for a little bit more, but not okay if you're pressuring. There is a bit of a balance to be had here, as in a balance of power. So I want to conclude my section on the product owner by just saying some characteristics of a great product owner. It's great if they have relevant business experience. It's not a requirement, right? You can, lean into it and learn it, but it's fantastic if they do. Some of the best product owners that I work with actually started off with the business experience and learned the product owner accountability as they went into it. So it's great if they do, but it's not a requirement, right? That's the great thing about Scrum. Scrum's a framework. There's very little, there's very few hard lines. There are some, but But in this case, in terms of product owner experience, it's great if they have business experience. It's ideal. Well, they really need to be focused on incremental delivery, which means adding additional value to the product in smaller steps, right? We can't build a car in one sprint necessarily, but we can maybe deliver a skateboard this sprint and add and add and add. So that focus on incremental delivery, that's at the heart of a Scrum, and incremental delivery really comes from the product owner. As somebody mentioned, another characteristic of a great product owner is they update the product backlog frequently. They have a benefit mindset. They're focusing, how do we benefit our customers? They're able to clearly articulate goals. So I'm with the people earlier today who said vision was really important. I'm with you. Vision and goals, really important. They think like an entrepreneur, even in large organizations. They act decisively when needed, right? They make the call on what we're focusing on. That's what we mean here. Ideally, they work well with developers. They're good at stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement, and they're able to create a reliable forecast. Forecast, not a promise. Key difference there. So those are some of the characteristics, in my opinion, of a great product owner. We're going to move on now to the Scrum Master accountability. And I've got, again, an 80s reference movie here. I got a lot of 80s reference. This is a cartoon reference. For those of you who don't know, it's the He-Man. It's He-Man, right? That's you knew it. I knew you did. I see some nodding over there. So I just kind of have it funny that cartoon in there is kind of a joke for me. Some few Scrum Masters take the idea of the Scrum Master a little bit to their head, right? The Scrum Master is not, I have the power kind of thing. Scrum Master is, their purpose is to improve the adoption of Scrum. They're not the team boss. They don't get to tell people what's the power of graceful. Nice. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. A lot of people don't get that cartoon reference. All right. So improving the adoption of Scrum is their purpose. That's what they do here. They are accountable for Scrum team effectiveness. Now, that word effectiveness can be taken out of context. The Scrum Master is not accountable for making sure that developers are, fully allocated. That's not what we mean by effectiveness. When we say effectiveness, we're talking about the application of the Scrum framework. Are we focused on the value that we're delivering? Are we focused on incremental delivery? Are we transparent? Are we inspecting frequently? Are we adapting? That's what the Scrum Master's focus is. So without the Scrum Master, back to the sailing ship reference, right? I don't even know how to sail, to be honest with you, but I do like this analogy anyways. The Scrum Master is responsible for the framework. So if we don't have a good focus on how we're working well together, it's like a ship with a bunch of holes in it, right? We're not going anywhere. We're being bogged down with totally unnecessary things. Unnecessary rules often get added to Scrum teams. You have to do this, you have to do that. And it just slows the Scrum team down. And so that's what my analogy is. Without a Scrum Master focused on how are we working together, we're like a sailing ship with a bunch of holes. We're kind of sinking. So some of the things that the Scrum Master does, right? The Scrum Master actually does a lot. Actually, the Scrum Master has, serves the organization, the product owner, the Scrum team. So a few of the many things that the Scrum Master does. They facilitate events as needed, right? You often see the product owner facilitating the retrospective or sometimes a daily Scrum. Now, I want to say that as requested or needed. That doesn't mean, right, that the Scrum Master's job is to facilitate every event. That's not what we mean, as needed. So as a Scrum Master of a newer team, I'm often facilitating more, spending more time facilitating daily Scrums, sometimes even helping facilitate the sprint review. But that's not all that we do here. And as the Scrum team matures, the Scrum Master, yes, facilitates sometimes, but also focusing on coaching the Scrum team, making sure everyone understands that they need a definition of done, right? And describing that, coaching and training and making sure people understand the Scrum framework, making sure the events take place and that they're positive, right? Productive, that the outcomes are happening and kept within the time box. So when I say positive, productive, and kept within the time box, I'm thinking about the retrospective right now. Are we having the retrospective? Is it productive? Are we coming up with actual improvements? And is it kept within the time box, right? Removing impediments or escalating impediments that they can't remove. Again, facilitating Scrum team decisions, helping the Scrum team make decisions that they might need to. Improving effectiveness, making sure that we're adopting Scrum framework and removing barriers between stakeholders and Scrum team members. So, like before, I want to ask you, of these things on the screen or others, what do you think is most important? Coaching, yeah, coaching is really important. Improving the effectiveness, right? And you're right. I've got a mix of what's their purpose and the things that they do in all of these slides. So that's very true. Okay, effectiveness, coaching the PO. I always do as a Scrum Master, often start with that. Removing impediments, so important. Coaching coming through. Coaching coming through a lot, right? Coaching can mean a lot of things. It can be mentorship. It can be lots of different things. Okay. So again, the Scrum Master serves the Scrum team. I see some others coming through. Oh, consulting. The Scrum team, the Scrum Master serves the Scrum team by coaching, mentoring, training in Scrum. The Scrum Master serves the organization by leading implementations of Scrum. A lot of people don't realize that yes, Scrum Masters do lead implementations of Scrum. They can coach in really the transformation of the organization even. And they serve the product owner by helping them find effective techniques for product backlog management, which means, right, often setting up the Scrum board, helping the product owner decide how should that board be considered, configured in the best way so the product owner is comfortable controlling or managing the product backlog there. So the 8 stances of the Scrum Master are really discussed in much further detail in the Professional Scrum Master course from scrum.org or the Professional Scrum Master 2 course from scrum.org. I'm just going to touch on them briefly here because honestly, I love those 2 classes, and we're gonna touch on these a little bit. So the 8 stances of the Scrum Master. Briefly, they're a mentor, as a lot of folks came in here. It's kind of, for me, falls a little bit of coaching. They're a mentor. They provide one-on-one guidance to the product owner, to developers, to leaders, right? Managers who are not even on the Scrum team, to stakeholders. How do we interact with the Scrum team? How does the Scrum team fit within the larger organization? How do people communicate with the Scrum team? How do we get value? Are we getting the right value, right? How do we judge the success of the Scrum team? All of those things falls under mentorship for me because it's one-on-one. Another stance, although my screen appears to be locked up here. Here we go. Teacher. Sometimes they're actually teaching on Scrum, a very respected profession. Teachers. They're teaching the Scrum team members and the organization and the stakeholders, sometimes the customers, about what is Scrum. Why am I not getting everything in one go? Why do I want this skateboard? Right? I wanted the car. Why do I have to wait? The value of incremental delivery, the value of learning as we go, the value of empiricism, the value of accepting change and learning as we go. Sometimes they're pointing north and explaining why behind Scrum. Why is incremental delivery important? Well, because we have visibility more frequently, because we can deliver value sooner, because we're open to changing frequently, because we want to reduce risk more quickly. That's the why behind incremental delivery and behind the Scrum framework. Some of the why, I should say. Sometimes the Scrum Master is doing nothing. They're not jumping in and solving every problem for the Scrum team. That doesn't mean I'm doing nothing, right? I'm just not jumping in and over solving all the time as a Scrum Master. Sometimes the Scrum Master, as you all mentioned in our vote earlier, sometimes you're coaching the Scrum team. You're helping them come up with their own solutions. Sometimes the Scrum Master facilitates events, right? And there's lots of great facilitation tools. If you haven't heard of it, take a look at liberatingstructures.com. Fantastic source for facilitation techniques. And sometimes they're taking action on impediments, escalating those things when they need to do so. Sometimes they're upholding Scrum. No, we can't skip the retrospective. Here's why, but no, we can't skip it. No, we have to have a product owner. We have to have all 3 accountabilities. So sometimes the product owner is standing up for Scrum and here's what we need to do and here's why. But anytime you break the Scrum framework, right? Anytime you don't fully adopt the Scrum framework, here's the consequences of that. And here's the reason we shouldn't do that. Here's the reason we do need to adopt Scrum as described. So some myths about the Scrum Master briefly. They're not the Scrum police. They're not the team admin. They're not the chairman or the scribe who's always taking notes. They're not the hero of the team. They're not the boss, right? And so for more on those sort of myths about the Scrum Master, take a look at my website, rebelscrum.site. I have a lot of articles on myths, or better yet, attend the Professional Scrum Master 2 class. It's a really great one. I have some comments on liberating structures. It's really great. So yes, it is really great. So a couple of questions here, some overstep questions, back to the balance, right? I've described the Scrum Master, but let's talk about how do we apply that. So here, a little scenario here. The Scrum Master requests that all stakeholder communications should go through the Scrum Master in order to improve the efficiency of the Scrum team. Is that an overstep? What do you all think? Okay, got a little back and forth on that. I'm going to say, yeah, that's an overstep. And here's why. Because I know that the Scrum Master in this situation is trying to help. I totally understand that. But part of the Scrum Master's accountability is to remove those barriers. Let the Scrum team collaborate with stakeholders when they need to. There's the balance in all things. We don't want Scrum Masters going around the product owner and requesting work, right? So there's a balance here, right? But on the other hand, we do want developers to be able to collaborate with stakeholders when necessary. So for example, imagine a developer is writing up a product backlog item on behalf of the product owner. They absolutely need to collaborate with stakeholders. So that would be an overstep. We don't want all communications to go through the Scrum Master. If stakeholders are requesting work, on the other hand, developers need to be able to be empowered to push back and say, oh, that's a new request. It needs to go to the product owner. So developers should be empowered to, I'm going to say, stand up for themselves, stand up for the Scrum team, stand up for the product owner and say, nope, we don't request new work. That needs to go to the product owner. So yeah, I see that. I didn't mean no, I got it. Okay. Handovers? I didn't understand that. Okay, so I'm going to go on. One more I think we have on the Scrum Master. Is it an overstep? Okay, the Scrum Master provides forecasting tools and options to the product owner. Is this an overstep? Giving them templates and saying, here's one. What do you think? Is that an overstep? Absolutely not. That's definitely not an overstep. That's helpful. In fact, as a Scrum Master, sometimes for new product owners, I'm actually drafting up the forecast for the first few times and saying, is this what you meant? Is this the format that you wanted? And I'm actually doing that level of help often. And it's a partnership. I like the way you put it, Jeannie. So very nice. It's a partnership. Giving options, not dictating. Very important. Thank you, Bruce. All right, so some characteristics of a great Scrum Master. Servant leader, right? We're serving the Scrum team. We're serving the organization. We're serving the product owner. I'm not the boss. Sometimes I wish I was, but not the boss. Strong communication skills. A deep understanding of Scrum is really important for a Scrum Master. Now, Scrum Masters can learn that on the job. I'm not saying at day one, you've got to be the expert, but get out there and if you're going to be the Scrum Master, you need to understand Scrum. Take the training that you need to read the articles and understand it. At the heart of Scrum is empiricism, the ability to learn as we go. And that means as Scrum Masters, we can learn as we go. Empathy and emotional intelligence are really important. Being able to read the room and see, how are people feeling? Are these events indeed positive and productive and kept within the time box, right? Part of that's empathy. Facilitation, conflict resolution, often, right? Making sure that people understand the impact of their tone and the questions that they're asking and the way they're working together. Continuous learning and improvement, ability to coach and mentor. That's something a lot of us grow into. Strong problem-solving skills, the ability to recognize when things are off the rails, ability to manage complexity, and passion and enthusiasm that you want to focus on continuous improvement. By the way, continuous improvement's not easy. Like that requires a bit of fire. And so that passion and enthusiasm are important, in my opinion, important characteristics. So let's talk now about developers on a Scrum team. So the purpose of developers on the Scrum team is to deliver a valuable increment of product every sprint. That's a big ask. When you're first converting to Scrum, it can feel a little intimidating for developers. And so it's really important that we understand incremental delivery and that developers are committed to this idea of incremental delivery. So again, with my sailboat analogy, last one, right, for today, actually. So I think of developers as the sails on the sailing ship. They are the driving force. Without developers, we're not going anywhere. We're just sitting there in the water. So developers are I'm going to mix metaphors here, the engine, the thing that's pushing us forward. So some of the things, not all of the things, but some of the things that developers are accountable for, of course, is delivering that done increment, bottom left-hand side. That's what we do here. You're delivering this, whether that increment is software, human resources, marketing, microscopes, jet planes, right? We're delivering a done increment of product each sprint, not the whole thing necessarily, right, at the get-go, but something that works and is usable. And to do that, the product owner, the developers are also accountable for sizing work. I shouldn't use the word estimate. I should say sizing the work, making sure that the work is small enough to be completed within the sprint. So they're brainstorming, they're talking with the product owner, get on the bottom left, collaborating with that product owner to maximize the value of the product. So for example, if our product is, a redesign of the house that I'm living, or let's say building a new house, the developers are saying, okay, product owner, let's start with a tent, right? We can't deliver the whole house in one sprint, but how about a tent, right? And then next we'll do a shelter, and then we'll do this. And they're collaborating with the product owner to help them break that work down so that it's small enough to be done within the sprint. The product owner needs to really work well with the developers on the to-do list. I can't, as a product owner, ask for the moon in one sprint. I need to ask for what's reasonable. What's the first thing we can do? My goal is to go to the moon, mixing metaphors again. How do we get there? What's our first step? The developers are also in the sprint adapting their plan. Right? So leaving aside refinement for a moment, during the sprint, they're adapting their plan. They're changing how are we delivering that sprint. The developers are also, by the way, accountable for quality, because the developers are the one who close product backlog items or mark them as complete when they meet the definition of done. So they're accountable for making sure that the work is done as described or as desired. They own the sprint backlog, which is their to-do list for the sprint. They hold each other accountable as professionals. So as always, I want to ask you all, which one of these is most important? What do you think? Done increment every sprint. Yeah, that's the purpose of the sprint too. It's to deliver that done increment every sprint. The increment is really important. Increment. I think, yeah, the increment is really important. Quality, also really important. Collaborating with the product owner to maximize value, helping them come up with the to-do list is really important, right? So incremental delivery coming up. When we talk about developers, why these aren't technically titles in Scrum, but this includes BA. Yes. So very, very, very well stated, Jamie. When we talk about developers, we mean the people doing the work of the Scrum team. So when we say developer, could mean developers, software developers, could mean testers. It could mean a BA who's on the Scrum team, could mean SQL people, or if you're a human resources team, it could mean the human resources people. It could mean the marketing people. So the word developer can be very confusing. It means the people doing the work of the Scrum team, whatever that work might be. So well stated. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Okay, so delivering that increment, delivery is really important for developers. So of course, we've got a couple of scenarios for you here. So in this scenario, the developers provide suggestions to the product owner on technical debt fixes to add to the product backlog. Is this an overstep? All right, definitely not an overstep. We want that, right? The product owner should be very interested in hearing these suggestions for fixes for technical debt. The product owner most likely won't know what technical debt problems that we're facing. So it's really important for the developers to speak up and say, hey, listen, it's really slowing us down. This thing, we need to fix it. We really need to reorganize the code. We really need to do a security upgrade. All of those ideas and things, it's fantastic if the developers can speak up. And the product owner is ideally soliciting these ideas, asking for these ideas from developers. So yeah, definitely not an overstep. We'll do one more. The developers self-organize into the Scrum team structure that will help them deliver value to the organization. Is this an overstep? Yeah, definitely not an overstep. It would be fantastic if the organization, in fact, encouraged them to self-organize. Now, sometimes the organization will set guardrails that would sometimes in some organizations prohibit this, perhaps for newer Scrum teams. But as the Scrum team grows and the guardrails, will become a little bit looser as the Scrum teams get more mature, it's fantastic if the Scrum teams can self-organize. It's a wonderful experience. Let me ask, has anyone been part of a self-organization session? So put it in the chat if you have. Give me a yes or no on that one. Not yet? Okay. There, it is such a powerful experience. I have some people who have. Okay. So it looks about 50-50, roughly. Little bit less than 50-50, some. I would love to do that. In fact, I love self-organization. Okay. So the majority has said no, they have not. It's a great experience, a very powerful experience. Okay, one more on developers, because I feel like the developer is such an important accountability. So we did 3 here. The developers decide that Shamim, who's one of the developers on the Scrum team, will work on product backlog item A so that she can build her skills in that part of the software. She doesn't have experience in it, but she wants to grow her skills. So she, as one of the development team members, the development team decides as a whole that Shamim's going to do that product backlog item A. Is this an overstep? Yeah, definitely not an overstep. Of course they should, right? So fantastic. All right. Okay, so fantastic. All right, so we do have maybe 15 minutes. So I think we have time to go over the manager's, supporting role for Scrum. So the manager is, of course, not one of the 3 accountabilities. And yet having great agile leadership is really important for the Scrum team. So I will try and finish 5 minutes early. 5 minutes before the top of the hour, but I think we have time for the manager in Scrum. So let's focus in again on managers in Scrum. Managers are not part of the Scrum framework. There is no management accountability in Scrum, right? And yet there are managers in organizations, and everybody on the Scrum team usually reports to some kind of manager. And those managers may be a technology manager, could be a human resources person, could be a testing manager. Scrum team members on team A may report to different managers, and that's okay, or they may report all to the same manager, whatever it is. But managers in Scrum are accountable, right? Or I can't say accountable, but are responsible for creating the team culture, focusing on team culture, making sure that there's a sense of positivity on the Scrum team, and also setting guardrails within which the teams are allowed to self-organize. What are the rules of the game? Because you really can't self-organize if you don't know the guardrails. How can you self-organize if you don't know your left and right limits? So I think guardrails are really important to promote self-management. So managers in Scrum set guardrails. They remove impediments that are holding the Scrum team back. They ensure that developers, and again, the word developers could be in human resources, the people who do the work of the Scrum team, they ensure that they have the tools and the resources that they need. Managers are often communicating why. Why Agile? Why are we doing this? So they're supporting a change to an Agile way of working by communicating the why behind the Agile way of working. They're growing Agile maturity, recognizing and growing Agile maturity. That's something we talk about a lot in the professional Agile leadership course. They're focusing on team culture, making sure people are working well together, that we have a positive culture, a can-do attitude culture. They're focused on benefits, right? They have a benefit mindset. They help teams align around value, right? They're communicating to the product owner. What are the goals of the organization so that the product owner can make more informed decisions on what should our goals be? What should the vision be? What should be on our product backlog? They're helping make sure that the product owner has that feedback loop. Servant leaders and strategic direction. So of these or other things, by the way, if you could in the chat, what do you think is most important for leaders who are interacting with Scrum teams? Removing impediments. Yeah, right? That's really important. And by the way, the size of the sticky notes is not meant to imply anything. It's just a visual thing. Servant leadership, understanding Scrum is helpful. Coaching and empowering the Scrum teams, absolutely, right? Removing impediments, yes, can be organizational impediments or your impediments to your own development. Strategic direction, escalation path. Servant leadership, guardrails have always been key. Yeah, fantastic. Great feedback. All right, help teams align around value, remove impediments, empowering teams to have autonomy. Well said, Jamie. My goodness, you're just very articulate. Okay. So here's a scenario here. The manager sets a target that the Scrum team should improve their velocity by 25% this year. Is this an overstep? So yes, this is the stereotypical overstep, actually. So this is the one that everybody probably knows about. I think everyone's heard this one before. It's not even relevant. Yeah, it's not even relevant. Velocity is just a planning tool. It's not a measure of success. So yes, absolutely, that's an overstep. Managers shouldn't really be concerned with velocity. Velocity is just a tool the Scrum team uses to plan their work. It'd be like if the Scrum team, it just doesn't make sense. One more. The manager provides information to, actually I have two more on manager. So the manager provides information to the product owner about the corporation's overall goals and strategies so that the product owner can ensure that the product goal aligns with organizational needs. Is that an overstep? I like Vladimir's comment, by the way. So no, that's not an overstep. Not an overstep at all. Okay. Okay. Vladimir's comment was, give me a manager who wants to remove velocity and he or she will get my praises. No, I do think velocity is overused. I'm a big a big fan of flow metrics. Just count the number of product backlog items you complete per sprint and use that to plan. So much simpler. So that's a great, okay. No, it's partnership. Fantastic. All right. So some of the characteristics of a great leader, they're communicating about the why behind Agile. They're transparent. They provide insight and business goals and objectives. They're a servant leader. They're collaborative. I got to tell you, the best Agile leader I ever worked with was always asking, why are we doing this? What's the benefit that we're going to achieve from this? What's the good things that will happen if we do this? What's the bad things? What are the strengths? She's always asking so many questions. I thought she was fantastic. Adaptive, supports self-management, often by setting guardrails, but also by encouraging the team members to take greater accountability. They act when they need to do. They're decisive when they do act, and they act when they need to do. So they're not delaying decisions too unnecessarily long. They're trustworthy, right? They have a benefit mindset, and they're a continuous learner, open to learning. I didn't say they had to be a Scrum expert, but it's great if they get to learn a little bit about Scrum. All right, so we are coming up on time, so I'm going to jump us down to have the wrap up here. And I'm going to wrap up by thinking about the key takeaways in terms of the 3 accountabilities of Scrum. So back to the Scrum framework, right? The 3 accountabilities in Scrum: product owner, developers, and Scrum Master. So in a nutshell, right, the product owner is accountable for value. That's their purpose, is to maximize the value of the product. That's what they do here. And so in order to do that, they're mostly focused on, what are we going to do here? What's our vision? What's our goal? What's in our product backlog? What's our roadmap? How are we going to get there? So what are we doing is the product owner's main focus. They're not concerned with how as much, but they are concerned with ordering the product backlog and making sure that they're supporting incremental delivery. Developers, they're accountable for delivery. They're focused on how are we going to do that, but they're also working with the product owner to make sure that the product backlog is achievable and the higher order ones are sized small enough to be done within the sprint, so that's going to help them with delivery. So that's why they're focused on the how, and they're also working with the product owner on sizing the product backlog. And then the third accountability in Scrum, of course, is the Scrum Master. They're accountable for Scrum, and they're focused on teamwork, making sure that we're applying Scrum, that we know how to use it, and that we're working together well. So I want to ask you all now, it's really important that, we've spent almost an hour together, and I want to ask you, what is the most valuable takeaway from today? And the reason I'm asking is, by deliberately taking this moment to remember kind of what we talked about and thinking about it, it's going to help you remember this in the long term. So it's not a pat on the back for me, it's really for you. What is the most valuable takeaway from today's conversation? Put some stuff in the chat for us. So we had refresh and reconnect on basics, solidify common and shared understanding, clear refresher about accountabilities. Is there anything you learned or thought about that was interesting from today's conversation? From a product owner standpoint, or developers, or Scrum Masters? All right, clear refresher, all clear. Role clarity, always important. Agile leadership, fantastic. We're a team and we have our own accountabilities. Yes. Everyone has power, just in different areas. Oh, I love that, Jeff. Well put. Everyone has power. We all just have different accountabilities. I feel like that's just a mic drop moment, Jeff. Well stated. I'm actually going to copy and paste that. That's really well said. Technical excellence is underrepresented. Oh, you are so right, Jeff. Joe, you know what? You are so right. I probably should have included that. Technical excellence is underrepresented. Everyone has accountability. One role is not more important than the others. Well stated. That was Keeley. Well stated, Keeley. Nicely done. Managers and agile leaders should at least mentioned in the next Scrum Guide. Wouldn't hurt. Okay. So I want to say thank you so much for everyone for joining me today. You were fantastic. And by the way, thank you for engaging today in the conversation. I really greatly appreciate it. I'm going to wrap up my part and then I'll hand it back over to you, Jamie. So if you want to reach out to me, take a look at my website, rebelscrum.site. Would love to hear from you. My email, mary@rebelscrum.site. So thank you so much. And Jamie, back to you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And again, we so appreciate it. It's a great reminder for role clarity. And yeah, even I learned some things with everyone else. So it's yeah, this Reboot Your Scrum series is great, and we really appreciate you joining us on our journey, Mary. So thank you again, and everybody remember scrumday.org.
Thank you.
Is that the
It
is it
is.
scrumday.org? Yeah.
It is. I know, right? Sometimes I have that moment. It's not .com, it's .org deliberately. So yes, scrumday.org. Thank you so much, though. I appreciate that.
Yes. All right, everyone else, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending time with us. And we'll see you in the next meetup. I think we have a number 3 with Martin Dalmine is for Reboot Your Scrum. Number 3 is our final one, and that's on sprint goals. And so Martin will be here, and he literally wrote the book on sprint goals, or a book on sprint goals that he just released, which is very good. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. That sounds exciting.
Yes. All right, everyone. Have a great day, evening, wherever you are in this world. We'll see you in the next one.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.